Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode, another video of Vital Refinement. Today, I'm going to be doing part 2 of soul maintenance, what we can do for soul maintenance. Let me go back to what soul maintenance is for those who haven't viewed the first video. So basically, soul maintenance is the process of preserving our souls. It's a process of nurturing our souls. We can think of this as soul care, like we think of self-care, but as soul care. In the previous video, we talked about words that build us up, and words that build others up, and how that can contribute towards our soul maintenance. In this video, we're going to be talking about consumption. We consume constantly. We consume things through what we see, hear, taste, touch, all of our senses. In some way, we consume some type of energy, some type of emotion, feeling, thought, and these are through things that we consume. So what is it that you're consuming? What is consuming you? What is consuming your energy? What is consuming your thoughts, your mind, your attention, right? What is it that is filling your mind in these days, right? So those are different aspects of consumption. Asking ourselves these questions will help us evaluate, what is taking maybe a pedestal over God, or what is taking up room where our purpose should be. It helps us elevate the things that may be, taking space and limiting our time with God. Asking ourselves these questions can be revealed to us what is influencing our flesh. The media we continue to consume influences us and has us create desires within ourselves that aren't of God. So as much as we want to say, oh, I can still watch this, I can still listen to this, I can still be in this environment and I'm not affected because I know I'm a child of God and I'm disciplined and I have a power over my mind and I'm not easily influenced. That's very much can be true, right? We can also not be easily influenced. Like I said in the previous video, once you make up your mind about something, that's going to lessen the ability for something outside of God to influence you, your decision makings, your actions, right? But we still have this flesh that we're battling with, right? We still are human. So entering into those red zones really, I guess, test us, right? It tests our discernment. It tests our discipline, our spiritual discipline, and it tests our flesh. But there are things that happen unconsciously. Like I spoke about in the last video as well, like our mind is so powerful. We don't understand everything about our mind and how it all works. Only God understands that. It exceeds our understanding, right? So even though we may have this pride and this faith in ourselves, and we claim it's the faith of God that tells us like we can still be doing this and not be influenced or not be affected by it. There's something in our subconscious that still takes on that influence. Like it creates desires that we probably don't ever know were created because we watched that show, or because we listened to that song, or because we went to this event that wasn't really Christ-like, right? It creates desires within our flesh that aren't of God, narratives, standards, expectations of relationships, lifestyles, and self-images that are of the world and are against God's will. So when it comes to standards and expectations of relationships and lifestyles and self-images, that's all created like through social media, mostly like Instagram specifically a lot. Even though we may not be like directly engaging with this content, if it's coming up on our explore page, if it's coming up on our timeline, even if we don't like it, read the caption, follow the people, like, because sometimes Instagram just throws stuff on your timeline, people you don't follow. It's still getting processed through our mental, like it's still getting processed. The images are still getting processed. And so subconsciously that can still be creating some type of narrative or some type of standard expectation in us that may not align with God. So for me in particular, I had to like really sit down and evaluate, because I really, so if you know me personally, I'm like obsessed with relationships. I'm obsessed with relationships and community, creating relationships, maintaining relationships, sustaining healthy, safe, effective relationships. And so I like watching media that I can assess and evaluate and like look at people and like all the things. Like, I guess there's some psychology parts of that and some communication parts of that, because I was a communications major. So I like watching these dating shows, these reality dating shows, these reality shows on marriage and things like that, because I'm like analyzing. I like analyzing people. I like analyzing the process. I like, it just does something in me because I'm so passionate about having healthy, safe relationships and communities, right? But what I come to understand after receiving this word from God is like, even though I was very much aware of the toxic nature of these relationships, because like most relationships on a reality show are toxic, right? And that's what gets me wrapped up, because I'm like, oh, like this is because of trauma, or that's because, they had this past experience and this is why they're like, even though that was like what makes it interesting, I'm using my hands a lot, what makes it interesting, it still could have influenced me, right? So even seeing a positive or something we perceive as positive relationships can still underliningly create some type of expectations or standards we may unconsciously start to desire in our own relationships, and we haven't even discerned like if that's of God or not. Like, yeah, it seems positive in the world's view, but is that something that should even be an aspect of a godly relationship, right? So that's something that God had to correct me about, and had to like really talk to me like, yes, these things may seem positive, but like, one, are they even necessary? Two, are they of God? Are they of God's word and of how God sees a marriage or sees a friendship or a community or whatever the case, right? And so that's something I had to check myself about, and God helped me check myself, okay, before I wrecked myself. So I'm just saying, don't be too prideful when it comes to our flesh, because the most subtle things can influence us without us knowing. Asking ourselves these questions will help us understand why we have a certain mindset when it comes to relationships, lifestyles, or our self-image. Just as I spoke about with the relationship thing, like seeing people online, even if you're not subscribing to their lifestyle or what image they're portraying online, it can still subconsciously like have an influence on us, and then create these narratives or these desires that we never had before, or God doesn't want us to have for our lives. And so that kind of goes back to our making up our mind, right? If you make up our mind that we're not going to consume these things, or when we're consuming these things, we're checking ourselves, right? Like, we're using that discernment and that wisdom that we ask God for, and like testing the spirit within those things, right? Within these people that are online and in these shows and things like that, right? And that goes to the third way to practice soul maintenance is with our mindset.